Okay. Good morning and welcome to this hearing of the City Council's Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction. Today, the committee will vote on proposed introduction number 609A, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Ayala, which would establish a needle, syringe, and sharps buyback pilot program, as well as proposed introduction number 404A, which I'm proud to sponsor, relating to tracking the funds paid pursuant to the New York opioid settlement, which would require the agency designated by the mayor to develop and submit reports tracking the funds paid pursuant to the New York opioid settlement sharing agreement. So I just want to say welcome, especially thank you to all the members who are currently here. We have Deputy Speaker Ayala, Councilmember Caban, Councilmember Abreu, Councilmember Bottcher, Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Palladino, and Councilmember Hanif. So thank you all for being here. And I love the fact that we have such a strong attendance in this committee, so thank you all. As discussed previously in hearings of this committee, in New York City and nationally, opioid overdose is the leading cause of accidental death. Opioid use disorder and related deaths was declared a public health emergency in 2017, mostly due to the mass educational and promotional campaigns of pharmaceutical companies intended to convince medical practitioners and patients that these medications were non-addictive. And as we all know, this campaign was incredibly successful. By 2004, OxyContin became the leading drug of abuse in the U.S., and in 2020, almost 75% of overdose deaths involved an opioid. In New York City, opioids are involved in 88% of all overdose deaths. The 2019 lawsuit filed by New York Attorney General Tish James was intended to hold these various manufacturers and distributors responsible for the opioid epidemic. Many of these lawsuits and settlements are still pending, but thus far more than $1 billion has been secured to help combat this crisis. The goal of proposed Intro 404A is to ensure that the opioid funds allocated to New York City are being used to directly address this massive public health crisis, and for the city to be transparent about how these funds are and will be used to address the epidemic, especially in the communities hit hardest. In closing, I'd like to remind everyone of the importance of these funds by stating that as of June 2022, every 3 hours, someone in New York City dies of a drug overdose. That means New Yorkers die of overdose more than homicides, suicides, and motor vehicle crashes combined. It is my hope that this legislation will provide New Yorkers with the transparency that they deserve and the reassurance that the funds are being properly used in a manner that best serves our New York City communities. At this time, I'd like to turn to my colleague, Deputy Speaker Ayala, to make a statement on her bill as well.
Good morning, everyone. I really want to address the members of the body and thank you all for your support on 609A. This bill, has received very mixed reviews, and I think that was the intended, outcome. I wanted to make a statement with this bill. I've been in office for 5 years, and for 5 years I have been working on combating the opioid crisis in my district. And I will share with you that in year 2, in parts of the South Bronx that I represent, I had to call in a hazmat team to come in and clean up the thousands and thousands of syringe litter on one residential block that housed a daycare for children with disabilities, a church, and multiple dwellings. And I could not believe that it had just been left that way. And that's what happens. It gets left that way, right? Because communities of color continuously get, the short end of the stick. And, we understand the opioid crisis, and this bill by no way, is a remedy to the opioid crisis. It is not intended to resolve the opioid crisis. What it is intended to do is to ensure that we do not have needles in public spaces, that the kids that I represent in my community are not playing in a playground that is littered in syringe. Is a public health crisis, and quite frankly, I'm outraged that we had to get to this point where we had to legislate this. This is common sense. We know that we have a crisis in the city. We know that the syringe litter has been problematic for years, and yet we have seen absolutely no planning coming out of City Hall. And so this is the way that we're going to handle it. This is a pilot program. And I know that it's not without controversy, but I think that it will help alleviate a lot of what we're seeing in my community. So thank you all for, taking this leap with me, because I know that it hasn't been easy. But when I tell you that, this can be life-saving, I'm not kidding. So thank you all. And with that, I'm not voting yet, right? No.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. And before we begin, I'd like to thank our staff, as well as the amazing committee staff that are here: Sarah Sucher, our Legislative Counsel; Christy Dwyer, Senior Policy Analyst; and Danielle Glantz, Finance Analyst. And we're ready to begin the vote.
Good morning. William Martin, Committee Clerk. Roll call vote. Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction. Proposed introductions 404A and 609A. The items are coupled. Chair Lee.
Aye on all.
Ayala.
Aye on all.
Abreu.
I don't know.
Caban. Sorry.
I'd just like to briefly thank Deputy Speaker Ayala for her leadership here. I don't think it's controversial at all. If it saves lives, it's worth doing, and I'm super proud to vote aye on all.
Thank you. Botcher.
Aye on all.
Hanif.
Aye on all. Thank you so much for leading the way.
Williams.
Prior to coming into government, I worked for the Harm Reduction Coalition, and it's really measures like this that work to solve the issue in a humanitarian way. So I want to thank you also for your leadership, and I proudly vote aye on all.
Palladino.
Oh, I turned up. Okay. Now, I have a little bit of a problem with the bill, the first one, because I feel that the police need to do their job, and I believe that the sanitation department needs to do their job. And because I'm such a big fan of yours and what you stand for, I understand you, and I understand what your needs are. And this has been a crisis for way, way too long. So if my vote of aye helps this situation in any way possible, with some common sense and strong arm tactics now, we need to hold people accountable for what they're doing. A buyback program is not something that I'm fond of, because I don't believe there's any addict who is capable of being able to return their used syringes. I think it's silly. I don't think they're going to do it. However, if I could help move the needle on the record by voting aye, but we must incorporate strong moves and measures to take in these neighborhoods, because this is absolutely ridiculous. What you said today, as I spoke to you before, but what you said today moved me, that you were only in for year 2 and you saw thousands of needles. This is unacceptable. So I do vote aye on all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. By a vote of 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions, both items have been adopted by the committee. Yeah.